You bud?
Yes, I'm good. Are you there, David?
Mark, can you hear us now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right, very good.
Okay.
Okay. I'll call our meeting to order. Thank the public for taking the time to attend our meeting. We have a few items to add to the consent agenda. Under H, resignations, we'll add Kathy Carpenter, May 7th, 2021, Sabetha Food Service. Alicia Dieters, Axtell Junior High girls basketball coach. And under contracts, we'll add Brandy Mead, Wetmore Elementary School teacher. Christina Rice, Wetmore Academic Center secretary, library aide. Lily McClellan, Axtell Public Schools summer help. Got them all?
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda,
Just the regular agenda.
or the agenda as amended.
Motion with support to approve the agenda as amended. Questions or discussion? Those in favor raise a hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. Before we approve the consent agenda, are there any items anybody wants to take out of there to discuss?
I don't have something to take out, but there is some recognitions. That I think.
Okay,
One of the resignations is Miss Susan Liker. She's been with the school district for 40 years. That comes from a combination of different things. In 1981, she started with the school district in Wetmore as a kindergarten teacher and part-time Title I teacher. Well, I think the Title I was related to the middle school, but then she transferred to the Sabetha Elementary. She worked in Sabetha Elementary for 34 years, and she retired once. She came back and for a while, but for a total of over 40 years, and that's really something to be said. And she was respected by the kids, by parents, by colleagues. So big thank you and recognition for her support of our district.
I'd also like to recognize Susan Ayton, 9.5 years as our Whitmore Assistant Secretary, Library Aide, and Connie Hutfuss, 20 years as the Whitmore Business and Tech Teacher. A motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as described.
Second.
Motion with support to approve the consent agenda as
The $7,000 donation being approved.
And as well, we're also accepting a donation from the PTO Classroom Enhancement Program for a total of $2,400 this year. And it says in the information that we got that this program is one that teachers and staff can apply for projects or products that supplement curriculum, enhance the learning experience, impact students or their interests that are not otherwise serviced, and items that might promote positive behavior. So we want to thank them too.
Can I have one more comment? There are some other resignations in here that, too numerous to mention, if you will, but we've had like Susan Plattner, I believe. We've had some other teachers that have been here a long time, so I just want to make sure we recognize all those things. I will also make a comment because it reflects on the school. I was talking to someone the other day who's just here and new in the district, and they really complimented the teachers that were in their different students' classrooms. And the teachers as a whole, they said they really worked hard. They live away from here. They said the attitude of the teachers here is totally different than where they live. So we do have a lot of very good staff, and we need to support them any way we can.
okay. Now we'll go ahead and vote on consent agenda. Those in favor raise a hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0.
Just see my phone then.
Okay,
Darren, come on in. There you go, over here. This is Darren Funk. He has worked for the district this third summer as summer help. He's interested in getting a career in education, and so he's going to be our filmer tonight. So he's going to operate the camera for me. Yeah, you might have to see that. Yeah. So you kind of see that, and then you just want to kind of whoever speaking.
It's not quite as busy as a basketball game.
No.
Or exciting. Or as exciting.
At times. Most of the time.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address the board? Student council? PTO? Site councils? Booster clubs? Prairie Hills Education Association? USD 113 Foundation? Legislative update?
The last several board meetings, I provided in time for Todd to include in the packet information about bills pending and status and all. The legislature retired, so to speak, without actually passing a budget bill, and they had to come back for the omnibus session to actually pass a education budget bill and a lot of other things. So nothing I would have gotten out in time for the packet would have been relevant come the board meeting. At the end of the day, the budget bill was passed. It's a lot of information to digest. And some of the other bills did or didn't pass or make their way through. So hopefully by the next board meeting, I'll have sort of a wrap up that includes what happened in the omnibus bill.
Okay. We have the administrative reports in our packet. Any board members have questions for the administrators or any additions by any of our administrators to their reports?
I'd just like to make a comment about some of the things that are covered in Mrs. Gates's report. It would be worth going through and looking some of those links up. I've gone through one of them somewhat. It's both in regard to what our 5-year program is, and I haven't had a chance to look at that one. And then also this lovely, in this one, which is another one, which is only recommendations of what some of these 5-year programs talk about. And I think it's, the board needs to spend a little time on these comments that they made. They're very complimentary about the school, but as always, they come up with places we can improve. And I think that's part of the board should understand that and may raise more questions in the future. So, but I appreciate all the work that the staff does and what Mrs. Gates does. So, but that's our 5-year review. It's turning around and starting up again. It doesn't, it never ends.
I thought the state fruit project was kind of fun. In Mr. Wertenberger's class, I didn't realize some states have state fruit, but thought that was kind of neat. And I'm sure this is true for the other schools as well, but I was at the league, or the big track meet, the invitational, and just the number of people that it takes to put one of those track meets on. I know that our athletic directors don't get a lot of recognition, but I'm sure it's a headache, and I can totally see why they really don't want it to be rained out, to have to start all over again. But I want to thank the public, if anybody's watching, and encourage you to say yes if you get asked, because track especially is just, you can't put it on, I don't think, without a lot of people from the public that are willing to go out there and spend hours cold and windy. And so I also went to the middle school music program, and I was impressed with the band and the music, how much they've learned, and what a great job those teachers do. So lots of good things going on.
I'll just add just a couple of things that we will, Kent, be looking at that OBT report and their suggestions when our BLTs meet here in May. And that's when we'll kind of start talking a little bit about goals for the next cycle. It won't be done in that day, but it will be a discussion to get kicking off with our next 5-year cycle. So And that information has been submitted to go before the ARC. The ARC will take their recommendation to the state board. I believe it was at the June board meeting for the state board for our accreditation process. The only other thing that I really wanted to update you about from my report was the summer school program. At the elementary, we have probably a little bit over 100 students at Sabeth Elementary that will be at the summer school. We have 10 students from Wetmore and 10 from Wetmore and 16 from Axtell that will be coming here to participate. For the middle school, I can't remember what I said our numbers were, 29, 24, I can't remember off the top of my head. But we did learn today that there was some confusion on my part about how that virtual STEAM camp through KSU was going to work. And so we were thinking the students could choose one topic and they would do 3 weeks on that one topic. That's what I thought. That's how I read it. They need to be clear with their instructions because today we found out that I read it wrong. They can choose one topic so they can do one topic the first week, a different topic the second week. Each one of them is supposed to be 1 week long. So Lisa is our lead for that, and she is sending out another email to see if that changes anybody's plans, if they could just attend a 1 week session instead of being committed kind of to the 3 weeks. So we may have a little different numbers on the middle school, but it didn't change. Any student that's already signed up can still participate. They'll just be able to have more choices. So anyway, that's just a little update about that.
Jennifer, after you meet with the staff, it would be kind of nice if there's 3 or 4 key items in that OTV report that stands out to the staff. But like I said, the conclusions on the back, and I really didn't have a chance to look at all the way through. There's a lot of compliments in there, and yet, like they said, a few things that they suggest could be done better, and like the opinion of you and the staff.
Well,
After you have a chance to really look at them.
Yes, and I think that, that kind of goes back with our discussion that we had before about like the strategic planning and how we can combine the strategic plan and the piece of the 5-year plan. So I'm sure we'll be having some more discussions about that too. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Few things I wanted to update the board on. I had spoke about Symmetry, the group that we contract with natural gas, and we did join the schools that are asking for representation to visit with them about those bills, to basically ask them to prove that they met the requirements in the contract. And so anyway, I'll keep you up to date on that as I get more information. Meets requirements sounds really pretty kind of pathetic. But for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, there's meets requirements, which is the good thing, and then there's doesn't meet requirements. And we really don't want to be doesn't meet requirements. And so the good news is we've met requirements again this year for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and serving those kids. The interstate proposal I did want to bring to your attention. I know Mr. Tynan did some work on that. That is, if you remember the Axtell Commons area, there's like a vestibule or a foyer there with another set of double doors. And so the fire marshal wrote us up because as we tried to spread our tables out in that area to have as much social distancing as we can, we were obstructing the exit through those doors. And so Mr. Tynan had the idea of removing that foyer completely, indicating we don't use it nearly like we used to. That used to be the main access for gyms, for the basketball games, etc. And we're using the other entrance at this time. Some of those things, as opposed to the first thing superintendents think about, is using it to improve HVAC systems that are going to be at cost anyway. So anyway, this is an example of the budget. We did submit this. It can be resubmitted if we change our mind about some things. And it is a budget, and they're making up the rules as they go along with this information. And so, so my question is, okay, fine. What's the process for resubmitting the budget? Well, nobody's done that yet. Okay, so what is the process? Well, we don't have that in place yet. And so, I mean, it seems like all the time we're running into situations where they haven't made up the rule yet that we're gonna follow in order to accomplish that. So we're being patient, but I just wanted to share that information with you. The information on here for HVAC on ESER 2 that I budgeted in was about 176,000, which was gonna be on the new work that we were going to be doing as part of our facility improvement program, not the facility work that Mr. McKinley's gonna talk about here in a minute. I was planning on ESER 3 money for that. Something else that I talked to them about is, so we wanna get projects going as soon as we can because everybody else has the same idea. There's gonna be a back order on equipment. So, so can ESER 2 and ESER 3 money kind of flow together? And if they want to balance within the budget of using 20% for lost learning and different percentages in different areas, can we look at ESER 2 and 3 together as one budget? That's kind of what I'm doing. And in their minds, that's probably not what I'm supposed to be doing. But hopefully they'll be able to clarify some of those questions as we move forward. So, the state has a lot of bureaucracy. When you get to the feds, it really becomes a lot. Sabetha Middle School roof, we got a second opinion on the Sabetha Middle School roof. And they basically said, you guys need to wait. That roof looks like it's gonna be good for a while yet. I would wait until we really have some problems. They think we can get a couple more years out of it before we have to dump some major money into it. And so, so let's wait. The roof, it's interesting talking with Dean Strathman, the custodian there. He's been there ever since the building was built. And so he was with the building and he talks about how the roof has never been right. It's always leaked. The windows around the library up above, they've always leaked. And so there's been problems there that aren't new. And so we'll continue to monitor that and hopefully avoid putting some money into that for a couple of years.
Been a few
Other
drifts.
people had made some patches, they had done some things with it, and so we'll continue to look at that,
Okay.
Kent. He checked a lot of the seams and talked about how usually your problems are with your seams. I know they talked about some hail damage up there, but as we looked around, what they're calling hail damage is really sporadic. It's not what you would expect from hail damage, dings all over, pretty consistent. Seemed like there was a ding here and a ding down the way. I mean, it wasn't real consistent, so. Of course, this is the company that doesn't put on those kind of roofs. So they don't like those roofs, so we're just gonna monitor it and see how it goes. $15,112 more this year than last year. When I took a look at my projections, I projected that we were gonna be about $278,000 more this year than last year. I'm not that worried about it. We're gonna monitor those reimbursements from the State Department on those lunches. I think it's gonna balance out pretty well by the time we're done with everything. So I'm not too concerned with that. Even though as you look at that, $319 is a lot different than $277,000. But when you look at a budget of about, $11-12 million operational expenses, less than 100,000 becomes a small percent. So it's a lot of money, but it becomes a small percent. So in capital outlay is a little bit less, although last month we hit capital outlay pretty hard. So that's all I have for that. Anybody have any questions about this information or anything else I covered? Okay. Thank you, Eddie.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 is to approve short list of construction manager at risk applicants.
Any of the members on the facility committee want to comment about our meeting and any of the conversation?
I'll make, we met and it was rather interesting. About 10 minutes, we determined we all had a consensus without, and I spoke last. So, which was a good thing. But we eliminated one of 4 applicants. I think it basically was experience and references that they made were a lot of items done out of this area. A couple of them used to work for a firm in Colorado, and that's what they referenced a lot, which just didn't set, just the professionalism of their presentation. The other ones, I spent a lot of time looking at sizes of projects, and they all have done projects fairly recently. You know, you think, well, there's those $25 million projects, and then here comes along, we'll say, make it easy, $5 million project. And you think, are we gonna be kind of pushed back or second fiddle or something like that? They do a lot of that kind of work, all 3 of them. So the committee just said we didn't think it was worth putting the 1 through when it just didn't seem like they were gonna fly anyway.
And I'd add that Theodore and David were on Zoom with us during that meeting and listened to us, and then they had kind of made the same come to the same conclusion, so that was kind of nice to hear.
David and Theodore, do you guys have any comments to make?
No, I do not. Again, I think I just properly heard one of the committee members say, Theodore and I sort of had developed the same sort of opinion of the 3 who should be advanced, but I think the committee had already formed in their minds. So I would say we were all in concurrence, you know, who the 3 most qualified were.
So, any questions from other board members?
Could I ask which members are here tonight from any of the 3 CMAR companies represented? And which one?
Universal Construction.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
So is there a motion then to approve the short list of,
I'll make a short move that we approve the short list of AHRS, Universal Construction, and Lloyd Builders as the applicants for the construction manager at risk.
Second.
I would like to mention, since we know where HARS Universal is out of Kansas City, Kansas, and Lloyd Builders is out of Ottawa, Kansas. And I asked the architects about distance and whatever, because I know Universal has done things all over the state. And for example, and I had concern about, well, somebody being that far away, again, would we run into issues? And architects said no, and it isn't like, well, they'll have a bunch of staging cost or something beyond what somebody else closer in, because we know we're HARS fairly close. The other 2 are about 2 hours, 2.5 hours away, depending on whether you go to Ottawa or Kansas City, Kansas. So, and I just thought that was helpful to me because, you know, there is always a cost for bringing people in. So.
we have a motion with support to approve the short list of construction managers at risk to move forward with applications, HRS, Universal Contractors, and Lloyd Builders. Any other comments or questions? Those in favor raise a hand. Those same sign, motion passes 7-0.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Next item 5 is to approve the construction manager at risk request for proposals document.
So the document that was hyperlinked has been modified a little bit. The hard copy that you have is the one that's most recent. There was a document originally provided to us by Civium. I did an edit of it and then gave it back to them, and they did an edit of it and got it back to us. And so it's been through a couple of edits. Hopefully we've caught most things. We've tried to bring it up to date with adding the companies that made the short list in here. And hopefully, I think everything else should be good to go. We have been working on some interview questions and so we're working on making them shorter because the amount of time we have to interview is pretty short. And we're gonna be there a long time, but it's pretty short for each company. And so we wanna make sure that companies have an opportunity to answer those completely.
And this is scheduled for,
June 2nd.
any motion?
Any comments to make, David or Theodore?
No, we do plan to tour the facilities on the 13th with the shortlist firms, and we'll make them aware of the programming efforts to date and the schematic conceptual drawings to date, along with the some of the questions we're going to try to make those concise, and we'll issue that along with the RFP so that they have the questions that we're looking for before the interviews, so that we can keep our effort as clear and concise as possible.
So is there a motion to approve this?
I make a motion that we approve the CMAR RFP document.
I'll second that.
Motion with support to approve the construction manager of this request for proposal document. Comments or questions?
I do have one. There is that schedule, anybody that hasn't seen it in there. Remember phase three has a special board meeting on the 2nd of June. So how much notice do we have to give on
We've
that?
already approved it.
But
Haven't we?
I think, do we have to publish it?
We will.
Yeah,
We'll get it
that's
out.
what I mean.
I have the agenda ready to go.
So we'll be putting that in the public. So, but it is really, next month is going to be pretty busy trying to get this nailed down. And then it's interesting how fast part of it moves, and then part of it will probably go extremely slow. But anyway, just wanted to point that out. So board members, June 2nd is an extra meeting in there.
Other questions or comments? Those in favor, raise a hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. Move on to item 6, Scott McKinley recommendations regarding HVAC at our buildings.
Come on up here,
Sure.
Scott. I think that'd probably be best.
Okay.
Using the table, that helps.
Fine. Hi there, I'm Scott McKinley. I'm engineer with PKMR Engineers. So we were asked to take a look at the HVAC systems in your schools and kind of evaluate, rank them, kind of what needs to be replaced very soon, what can probably last a few more years, and what maybe can last even longer than that. So we narrowed it down to a few things in it's about the high school, Axel, and Wetmore. I don't know if everybody's got a copy of the little report.
What does it look like, so I know?
It looks like
Like that.
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which item was that in our packet?
It's right before 7.
Six.
Yeah, 6. That would be 6.
There we go. Okay. Yep, there we go.
So to kind of summarize it quickly for you. The Sabetha High School, those large rooftop unit multi-zones up there, and the controls in them is probably the weak link there. It's units themselves should last another 5 to 10 years, but the controls actually properly equal different zones of the school. There's some issues there, so that would be one thing we recommended at the high school. And then for the common space / office area, there's a couple of rooftop units there. We recommend go ahead and replace them at this point as well. Jumping down, the Sabetha Elementary School, the parts that we're going to replace as part of the construction project were not evaluated as part of this study, but the parts that were looked at were, there's some smaller rooftop units that were installed in 2007, is what I was told when I was on site. So the other one probably needs to be replaced very soon as well. That's the units hanging in the gym. Currently, they're heating and ventilating only. They do not air condition. So we have some districts that want air condition your gyms eventually, but I think that's the case here. But correct me if I'm wrong. So those were our recommendations, and obviously we gave kind of dollar budget amounts what we think it's going to cost. So obviously it's kind of up to you guys and whatever ESSER money you end up getting and what ESSER money you can spend on this to see which one of those makes the most sense for you guys.
You also mentioned Sabetha High School with the weight room ventilation.
Yes, okay, so, yeah, if the next thing we'd probably recommend, it would be at the high school, it would be, there's very little ventilation in the weight room gym area, so that would probably be another item that would make sense to go ahead and get that updated as well, so. Any questions on any of that?
So you said that you rated things as very soon. I'm not sure exactly what, help me understand that scale that you were looking
Soon as things, we're thinking probably in the next 2 or 3 years, based on anticipated lifespan of furnaces, units, rooftop units, that we're probably to the end of their life now, that we expect them in the next couple of years to need to be replaced. Anything that we thought still had, at least 5 years of life left in it, we kind of listed it, but we didn't put it as a priority.
So things that you estimated had 2 to 3 years life left. I think I'm looking at that same letter.
Right, pretty much everything in red, we kind of highlighted everything in red that we thought makes sense to go ahead and do over the next couple of years.
Over the next couple of years.
Yes.
Not necessarily this minute, but over the next couple of years.
Right. The ones that are I'm kind of surprised are still running are the 5 furnace units at Wetmore. That 30 years old is. I wish I could tell you the stuff we were replacing today would last you 30 years, but it won't.
And those units are on the elementary wing at Wetmore.
At Wetmore or Axtell?
Wetmore.
Wetmore.
That's
You
the
took
new
that
wing.
page over. Is this the page then that, on the back of that? Am I looking?
So that's another document.
That's
that I
another
did.
thing.
That's-
Okay, that doesn't go, I mean, it kind of goes, but,
I just gave you an idea of money.
okay.
And one of the things that we have until 2024, September 2024, for ESSER-free money, that I do think that we will be able to use for this if we go through the federal process for doing that. And some of what we talked about would be eligible for using ESSER money, but not all of it. So the gym heaters, they don't filter air, do they, Scott? They do?
They have the ability to bring in out, they are ventilation, so they are bringing in
Okay.
fresh air,
Okay.
yes. So they have the ability to ventilate, yes.
Okay, I thought they were using existing air and cycling it through. Okay.
Yeah, they've got the ability to bring in outside
Okay,
fresh
so
air.
they would qualify for that
I-
ESSER money
yes.
to improve the ventilation. The controls at Sabetha High School, if we can prove that we can improve the air quality, by updating those, they should qualify. Trying to think of what else with this process we need to think about. I am not thinking that the board wants to approve yet tonight. I still want to get some more information on ESER 3, but I don't want to wait too long because I do think that everybody's got the same idea and the equipment is going to be hard to come by if we want to get it and install it.
So you're not asking for any motion, this is informational?
Not tonight, but I do think that in the very near future, and I don't know, we are going to have to ask Scott to come up with requests for proposals on some of this, and so we could hire Scott to go ahead and proceed with some of that. If you see some things that you really feel strongly about that need to be done, we can go ahead and do that. And I don't know that we're gonna be money out of pocket by doing that. We're going to need it. It is something, whether we're able to use ESER money on or not, it is something that we're going to be needing. So that is something I don't want to wait on some of these things too long.
And I know you don't want to wait too long. You talked earlier how ESER is evolving at the rate that fruit flies evolve. And so we may know quite a bit more even at our next board meeting.
You think
So-
in June or July?
I do. I think July at the very latest, for at least to get started on some of these things that are high priority, that we know we need to be working on.
I have two questions about that. Number one is, okay, if you say, let's boil this down, put 2 or 3 high priorities. Also, can you, you've already submitted one proposal on ESER 3 funds, you said. Is some of this estimates in there, do you think, or would this be in addition to that request? Or are we limited to that figure on ESER 3 is what, $500,000, it's real money.
When I asked that question, the answer was maybe. You can maybe resubmit a budget that would qualify. And so we're gonna be spending some money on summer school, and Jennifer described some of that. So I mean, we are going to be spending money on learning loss. And I do think that it's possible to resubmit a budget that is more in line with what we're planning on.
But my question is, did somebody say that's all you can put in for, or is it unlimited if if we came up from every qualifying
The way the State
thing
Department
done?
of Education is administering this, they are really trying to keep a handle on how it's spent. And they're trying to encourage that a district doesn't spend all their money on HVAC,
Yeah.
because they don't feel like that's the intent of the money. So I think that they do want to balance. But I do think that they'll look at ESER 2 and ESER 3 combined.
I mean, I may be off base here, but it seems like one of these things is, okay, let's boil this down so we can have an idea of what is number one. Some of these are critical, ESER or not, and then we'll help. Also, we think we can make a good argument on some of these for ESER. And, whether they're up at the top where it's very critical, but, it won't qualify at all. And then some down below where it's saying these are important, but we think we can get some of this other funding because of, except make noise, with a better system. You would think, yeah, that's possibilities, that type of situation. That's all I'm asking. I'm saying Scott can say, hey, I'll help you come up with that and we'll see what happens.
And that's
I'm
probably
not
something
asking for a guarantee.
to think
because
about
we
the
don't
next
know.
meeting is to prioritize some of this information.
Yeah. And then we could say, then we'd be ready to move on at that time.
Scott, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Somebody else. I was just wondering, do you have any other contractual agreements with other schools? Is it important to get him on board at this point because other schools might be,
We're fine.
you're okay?
We're
Yeah,
already working with you through
okay,
David and Theodore, so
okay,
you guys are one of my important clients, so.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Whenever you guys decide, we'll get you taken care of.
I think there's some of these things that if we're going to keep our infrastructure in shape, we got to do anyway, regardless of whether it's ESSER money or not. I would be in favor of having Scott get some things started so that by the time we do make these decisions, then we can get the ball rolling a little quicker.
So
Well-
go ahead,
I was
Kathy.
gonna say, because I get that, but I also, that there's a lot of moving parts with the whole ESSER thing, and that makes a big difference. Whether we wait till even next month's meeting, I think we need a little bit more information before we move that ball any further.
So, but I completely agree with what you said, Jim, about we're gonna be doing it anyway. There are things here that we're gonna be taking care of anyway. I was lucky enough to have Scott, and I don't think I have the document that you provided, Scott, with your answers to some of the federal red tape. I have it somewhere, I can find it.
I've got it right here.
Okay,
So State Department of Education kind of listed 12 items that you kind of have to comply with in order to spend this ESSER money, so on construction type projects. So we went through all 12. We think we've got a pretty good handle on what they're asking for. It was a brand new document, it just came out, so how they're going to interpret some of these things on a case-by-case basis may be eye-opening to us a little bit, but we feel like we've got a pretty good handle on what they're looking for. So if anybody has any questions on that, I can certainly go through them line by line, but I don't know if anybody wants to, but there are 13 things they want to know. Basically, prior written approval from the state of education, we can get that taken care of. Davis-Bacon prevailing wage requirements, so that depending on what contract you hire, that may be a little higher than their standard wage rates. Assessment of environmental impact, so kind of that probably boils down to asbestos and lead-based paint in these situations. If we were building a new addition, it would be a few other things, but replacements, it's that. Then there's some just requirements they're gonna have with a contractor. Contractor Work Hours and Safety Standards Act, that's a no-brainer. Preservation of historical sites must be described in the application. So if any of your buildings are on the state, we'll have to go to the Kansas State Historic Preservation Office if any of your buildings are on the historic register. Apply with safety and health standards, not a problem. Supervision and inspection of the grantees, so that would be our job. We would basically make sure the contractor install things per the plans. Energy conservation, again, we will make sure that anything we design would meet the current energy codes. Equal employment opportunity, that's a no-brainer. Clean Air Act and federal water pollution control. That one, we feel pretty good about it, but how they're going to interpret that may be up for a little bit of debate. Debarment suspension, basically you got to hire a contractor that's in good standing, and for an anti-lobbying amendment, so basically you can't be paying people to do this work, or they can't be paying to get this work kind of thing. So it's all pretty straightforward, but it is kind of brand new, so any questions on any of that? So.
Do we have that document?
I can get it to you.
I appreciate it.
I assumed that these things that are highlighted in red were your recommendations of what we needed to be doing right now.
That is accurate,
Are
yes.
you asking us, Todd, to take things off of this list?
No.
Okay.
Those are our recommendations if they fit into your budget, so.
Okay.
So I think your earlier comment kind of tied into Jim's remarks was that, while we're not ready to make decisions on specific items and priorities tonight, we want to know more how Esser's going to deal with some of this, that perhaps we could move ahead with some requests for proposals. Like, is that what you're
Yes.
referring to also,
I-
Jim?
You know, if we can use SR money, great. But if it's falls outside that recommendations for that, this is things that we almost have to do just to keep our buildings
Well,
viable.
it makes sense to me that, you know, if we've got time at this point to start drafting requests for proposals, you know, you just kind of get,
Is there
Get
a
us
cost
started.
involved with drafting the request for proposal? Then if there's a cost involved with drafting the request for proposal, then I think with, you know, waiting a month to see what guidance they come out with the ESSER. You said it was a brand new document, and it's amazing what the rule and reg committees do as far as the guidance that they issue. We've seen that a lot in the last COVID year, and I've seen it a lot generally with various rules and regulations that when they have a new baby, they like to dress it up.
I have one question.
Make the motion that we hire Scott to at least start the request for proposal. We won't necessarily go with everything on this list but get that ball started.
So you're talking about the things in red,
Yes.
Jim?
Good question. There's a cost for doing the request for proposals, right?
Well, sure there is.
Well,
That being
so-
said, Kathy, we're still gonna have to do it regardless of whether or not we get ESSER money to do this.
What kind of money are we talking, what's the cost associated with the request
I
for
don't know that I
proposal?
ever revised it based on these specific ones, so it should be coming down a little bit from previously, but I can get that to you. I can get that.
Ballpark, $1, $50, $500, $5 million?
Are you talking about the projects here?
no,
Well,
just
the request for
just
Oh,
the
how much
proposal.
that, oh, okay.
We're typically at about 5% of construction costs, so we're
So-
looking at 300,000 for like 15,000,
15,000.
that kind of range.
So,
Jim, are you wanting final or kind of saying we're gonna put these together
Put
in
these
conjunction
together
and
and-
do some of the ranking and then we can come back and.
well,
and
shouldn't we
finalize
do
it?
the ranking before we asked him to spend 5% of the cost? Shouldn't there be?
That's a question for him. If he just say, I think I can start narrowing this down and I'll give you the.
Yeah, if that's
opinion.
the way you guys would like me to proceed, just to kind of take this and narrow it down and not get anywhere near that kind of cost until I've been given formal approval, say in a month or two, we could at least get the process started.
Could we live for a month, in other words, and say,
Yeah, 'cause we're gonna have to develop some plans to show this work. That's part of that.
Well, I kind of see
and
it
then
as,
you're ready to go if we say we want it all, or?
Right.
Eight of
We
the
need to
10
back up
or
and say,
more.
okay, we're not gonna do X and Y, we're already do Z and whatever, so we can. I've worked with you guys long enough, I don't have a problem heading down that path.
You
We need to back
I
up.
think we can live with that, Jim?
To wait a month.
Yeah, I mean, not a formal request for proposals, but to do the background, and so we're about ready to say, we'll do what you want, and then say, go finalize this and this and this and this. In other words, a request for proposal is usually pretty well finalized. See, that's all I'm saying. I don't think we're quite there.
Is there anything in this list, Scott, that you would kick out? If we
Well,
wanted
but you
to?
see, that's the responsibility of this body.
I
not
understand
him.
that, but I'm asking a professional's opinion on anything that would, and then we can look at this. Here, just in the only thing that I can see honestly, that I would question maybe, possibly, are there at the high school. I mean, when we start talking about units that are 30 years old, that they're still operating is rather amazing to me. I run old equipment on my farm, and I get 10 years old on some of this equipment, and we're talking major rebuild before it can be used again. And I know with electronics and furnaces, especially things that today, they don't last 20, 30 years anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's accurate. The new stuff
Yeah,
probably won't last 30 years again.
no.
So
One quick question also. You mentioned maybe running into a problem, could be after we couldn't get the equipment. As Tom mentioned, I don't remember,
Well,
but that is happening around the country. Have you heard anything?
if you want it done this summer, we probably need to take some action tonight. If you're good with saying, okay, maybe this is design and we did, and it happens next summer, summer 2022, then I think we all kind of fine. But yes, there's definitely some issues with getting equipment today.
And every school district press release that is in the paper that I've read is doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They're all gonna be ordering the same equipment,
Yeah, so
everyone I've read.
this summer is probably gonna be tough. Yeah, I'll just tell you right now, it would be real tough.
Yeah. We'll be shooting for next summer. probably.
You know, like the Wetmore schools, those units, that could happen this summer. Some of the smaller rooftop units, that could probably happen this summer, but, getting a lot of work done this summer is gonna be tough just because of
Well, I think
backlog on equipment and backlog on contractors.
really the issue we're talking about is we would give Scott the go-ahead, just begin the process of drafting some requests for proposals. And I suppose if there are, I think of a draft document, you get a
Yeah, so
document that's probably not gonna be complete. There may be questions that he'll need to wait for our decisions on. But it's just it's a way to get a start and start structuring what the request for proposals will look like, what we know will be in them now, things we don't have answers to yet, so, it's.
If we talk about, say, 5% of the fee, say we cut down a few of these, we're not talking about reducing the cost for the proposal that excessive amount. It's going to be about the same amount regardless of how much we go with. I still think if we're going, like Stan was saying, that if we're going to get some things done, we kind of need to get on the ball.
I agree with Jim, so I will second his motion. I think this equipment is gonna be back ordered for years. I do. I mean, you can't even buy a 2x4 right now.
It's
Well-
terrible.
We have a motion. Give Scott the go-ahead to begin drafting a request for proposals. We're not expecting that we're gonna have a final document next month, and we're going to make decisions on the items to go ahead with. I think the item is just if they've got time that they could start working on this document, that they got to go ahead and get started with it. Questions or comments? Those in favor, raise a hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-1.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you, Theodore and David. I'm guessing you guys have probably had enough by now.
We just wanted to stick around,
We were just visiting and I just asked her, you know, what she's seeing in schools from kids not being in school, and she says it's very, very evident. And I think anything we can do with this program is gonna support our teachers who are gonna get these kids in class. And I think Brandy Edelman just does an excellent job of working with parents and servicing our area. So I'm in favor of it. I make a motion to approve the proposal.
Second,
Motion with support to approve the proposed parent as teachers proposal for the coming year. Any other questions or discussion?
How many, is this, are we increasing or staying the
I
same?
think it's the same as last year.
Okay.
And I asked Brandy to give me that information, and that's what she shared with me.
So it looks like a unit of service, 8 family slots, looking at 4.5 units.
And I did talk to her just not a couple weeks ago, and I asked her how it'd been, and for her, because usually, you know, she's making personal home visits. And she said, you know, it's been pretty amazing, how she hasn't lost any families. She said, in fact, they've welcomed the support even more because of being home and, you know, everything that's all parents have gone through. So she said we do Zoom, but she said we've also been really creative in how to just continue doing what they're doing. So
I think one of the biggest numbers there is just the personal visits, almost 250 in a year's time. They work, I would say, pretty hard at this program. And you take that cost, 250 divided in that bottom line cost here, and that's pretty inexpensive for people doing some Zoom, but most of the time they would be in person at those people's homes.
I think we've seen a lot of proven positive
Yeah.
results of the money well invested.
the PATNC stressors that she mentions in bold on the front, Stan and some of those people that, if Brandy's usually here, and it's pretty interesting, but I've seen that worksheet and it's kind of a checklist. And so these stressors are a big list of criteria that maybe a single parent, and they take into account all kinds of things about the family situation that gets them check marks, and those are called stressors. So with so many of those, then that child is, that family would be accepted into the program. So that's kind of how it works. So.
Other questions or comments? We've got a motion with support to approve this project proposal. Those in favor, raise a hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes,
6-1.
you know,
6-1.
6-1, yeah.
6-1. I don't vote.
You voted
Hey,
against.
I did
He
not
abstained.
vote.
But abstention is the same as a no
Abstention,
vote.
yeah.
Yeah.
One extension.
No, the people involved are good. But again, I don't think this is I think this is a project that I would love to see the churches taking and get involved in rather than the government. Just in my
Food program.
I asked that the board go ahead and approve this program. I'm not positive we have to, but nothing is going to be hurt by approving it. I would ask for approval of that. And just a note that we did hear that students are gonna eat free for next year.
And are you asking it to be approved for the whole summer or through
So
June?
we're doing June only.
Okay,
So, but if you would approve the summer food program as planned for in our district.
I'd make a motion that we approve the summer food program through June.
Second.
Motion with support to approve the summer food program through June as planned. Questions or discussion?
They are planning on providing food for the summer
For
school.
summer school, but
In
that's
July.
Yes, but, yes, well, that was my
That's
question,
it.
is, are we gonna have a separate motion to cover the rest of the summer?
maybe. So,
Okay,
Sorry, I just
That's
wanted to
okay.
make sure.
all right.
You're okay with the,
Well, then, we'll approve what you present when you present it. So, but for now, it's just through June.
any other comments or questions? Those in favor raise a hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. Item 9, adjust supplemental positions.
So, and we always struggle with supplementals, with the number of coaches that we have. We never know from year to year what we're gonna have for athletes that are out. I would recommend that we go with a couple of positions and we reduce from 2 coaches to 1 with the idea that if the numbers are there, we can go back up to 2. But I know that we've looked in a couple of situations and we've gone, well, we could probably got by with 1 coach there. But what the board sets as the number of supplementals we're gonna pay for is what we go with. And so I would recommend that we reduce from 2 positions to 1 for Wetmore Middle School track and from 2 positions to 1 for Wetmore High School girls basketball. And then that for Sabetha High School football, we increased from 5 to 6. But every year since I've been here, we've said, well, we'll bump it up to 6 if they've got the numbers. They've had the numbers. And looking at the numbers that they have, they're gonna continue to have those numbers. So we just as well make that change so that it's not something that we just have to deal with every year.
I make a motion that we adjust our supplemental positions for fiscal year 22 and beyond, as described, which is reducing Wetmore Middle School track from 2 to 1 positions, Wetmore High School girls basketball from 2 to 1 position, and Sabetha High School football from 5 to 6, which would be an increase of 1.
I'll second it.
Motion with support to adjust our supplemental positions as presented. Questions or discussion? Those in favor raise a hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. Item 10, McGraw-Hill reveal math resources grades 6 and algebra 2.
And we worded it that way because it's not necessarily a grade level when they get to the high school. So it's
Right.
up through algebra 2.
Right, so the math teachers have been meeting throughout the school year. We had 3 different teachers that piloted resources. I've been trying to keep you updated in my reports every month regarding the progress. They chose the Reveal math resource. It is from the same publisher, basically, kind of confusing, but basically the same publisher as what they currently use. What's been changed, they've added, have 11 hard books in the classroom that could be checked out. And then every kid would have also the digital access to, like they currently have. So it's not every kid with a book, but it's kind of that combination. And that's really what the teachers recommended for the high school. At the middle school, I should have pulled one of those out. It is a soft book. At the high school, we have samples. Yeah, it's a workbook. It's a soft book. Those teachers that piloted it, Mr. Hayden said the kids loved that. Mrs. Schirmer isn't as crazy about that, but I believe because of the pricing with the bundling, it's easier just to go ahead and plan on doing the 6-year ordering of those. So at the middle school, every kid would have a soft back workbook and the digital access. So if they forgot their workbook in the locker, or it gets demolished, or the dog eats it, the student would still have the digital, so that they could, have the digital resource. So that's kind of what we were as far as with the
Jennifer,
resources.
is that soft cover one they could just leave home? Or would the teacher want that in the classroom? I don't know.
I don't know,
Yeah.
that would be up to the teacher.
I kind of liked it. I went in and looked at the
I can
set.
get anybody wants to look at it.
And, because I had a couple people ask about, the book adoption, and I am not a math teacher, but I did read through the story problems, and I looked at, there's a little, every unit, I guess, maybe they highlight a mathematician in history. I looked through those, just kind of trying to keep my eye on, things that I think parents are concerned about right now. And I didn't see anything, red flags in that curriculum at all. I thought it looked good.
But what I would say about that, when I say a workbook, it comes in two volumes. So there's a volume 1, which would be kind of first semester, a volume 2, the second semester. And that book it is the teacher problems, it's the sample questions, it's everything, so that as a parent, when my child comes home and asks me a question, I'm always like, well, I don't know it off the top of my head, but if I can look back, I can figure it out. So I can flip back, because when I try to do it on the iPad, I can never.
Well, that's why I thought if they could leave that one at home, I know a lot of middle school parents probably would appreciate that, just because some of them are older. I know some of them are really young, but maybe they're more in tune to the iPad approach, but.
Well, I just know the flipping, when you're on the iPad, the flipping back and forth.
Yeah.
How many different curriculum did you look at?
Oh, gosh.
Go
Well,
back and look at that, in that room, Jim. It's about,
we're going back there later, but some of that's not that curriculum. We looked at, the three big publishers, are out there. We looked at, Ed Reports, so I would say, CPM, some smaller publishers, CPM, I can't think of what it was called. We interviewed somebody and she said that they had that at their school and they loved it. So then I went back and looked at that, that one. And there was like 2 or 3 other smaller ones. So probably 7 or 8 different ones is what we looked at. And we used the Ed Reports, which is to kind of help us narrow it down. It rates textbooks, resources for math, really for everything anymore, but specifically math, reading, and science.
What was this?
It's called edreports.org.
Okay.
So we looked at that. It talks about alignment to the standards, and it gives all of them a rating for different skills. So we looked at that. We also met with Melissa Fast. We started this before COVID last spring, and we had her come in. She is the former Kansas State Department of Education math consultant. And she talked to us about different resources that other schools might be using that they liked. And so it's probably more like 10 different resources probably that we looked at. Yes.
6-year contract, so how's the workbooks? Is that included for
Yes,
6 year? This
6
price
years,
include the replacements and the whole?
The 6 years, so in order to get the best deal
Mm-hmm.
is to do the bundling, and so they'll ask you how many years you want, and 6 is kind of the standard for textbook adoption. And so that 6 years, those books for the middle school, if you scroll down, Mr. Evans, I think I put 90, they're on direct ship. So what happens, that price, go back, up. Yeah, right there. So those 60 or whatever, they say that price, that $99 is the direct ship price. That's for the books to come, the 90 textbooks every year to be shipped here. We don't pay any extra. And so what happens, they have an online portal generally in the spring. They say, hey, check your numbers. I can switch it around if the course 2, we needed more than course 1, whatever. I can switch it around in their system, but then they just come auto ship. That's where our science books are, and that's what, and then I tell them, when do I want them? and then they come. So those science books that are back over there, that's the way we purchased them 2 years ago. Every spring, I change the numbers that we want. They just send me, that's the cost, including the shipping of those books for the whole 6 years.
So in other words, this is a 6-year program, so it costs about $8,000 a year, which is not too bad on some of the things that I've seen.
Because our
we've had to
license,
purchase.
yes, because our licenses are expiring, and since our textbooks are all digital, if we don't do something, I'm gonna either have to renew that digital license for those textbooks that we already have, because we don't have any hard copies. And for the 1 year to extend it, that's where they get you. That would be probably about I hate to guess, $10,000 or $15,000 just to extend what we have currently, just the digital,
Just
for 1 year.
Did all the teachers preview it in their classroom or did
No.
just a sample of
Yes.
teachers? Okay,
And that was totally voluntary.
okay.
And so we met, like I said, we started this process before COVID, and then COVID hit, and we really didn't get together like we would have normally to get what we currently have for 1 more year, because we would have to have something for next year. And they said, let's move forward. So then, when we met in October, November, then I said, who is willing to pilot? Well, with everything going on at that time with remote learners in person, I only had 3 teachers that volunteered to pilot. And even then, and I should say that was probably closer to January, they didn't probably do as much as they could have if we would have waited and been able to do it in the fall. And so they were volunteers, so I appreciate their time, their expertise.
Did you get one out of each grade level? I mean, like high school, middle? No.
I had Thelma did the Algebra 1 at the high school at Wetmore. Brent did 6th grade here, and Heather did 8th grade here. So I didn't have anybody do 7th grade, anybody do geometry or algebra. And when we met, we also did, we had 3 different video conferences with 3 different publishers to go over there and review their online components of their programs. So everybody participated in that. And I erased it, but basically then when we met last week, what we did is, I had everybody say what was their first, we kind of narrowed it down to 3. And then what is your first, second, third choice? And we voted up here on the board, and I just added it up then, and the one with the lowest won, because that was their first choice, and it was overwhelmingly this one they chose.
I'll make a motion to approve the McGraw-Hill math. What do we want to call it? Contract. Is that good
How
enough?
soon would you be able to, how soon do you have to do this, to order it?
Well, to order, well, that's why we wanted to go ahead and meet and get this brought in front of the board, because if you see that $2,500 that the comp, is professional learning for the teachers, and you wanna have the books in hand before you do the professional learning. So if you wait till the next board meeting, which is June, 10th, 12th, 11th, I don't know, whatever day the board meeting is next month.
It's a little
Yeah.
later even next month.
And then I get it ordered. By the time it gets here, you're looking at July 1st. By the time you plan the professional development, it just kind of puts it a little bit tighter time frame for the teachers. And I've had it in my board report that anybody was welcome to come and look at it. I've tried to keep updated about what we're doing with this process. I don't know,
It would be nice, have been nice if we had a few of the
I have
samples
them.
here.
I have them.
With the board.
You can't copy the whole book, though.
Pardon?
Did you want a copy of the whole book sent out?
There's copies of the book back there.
We've got mine here.
I think it's been screened, I think the math staff, seems to me that they've screened it,
We had
pretty thoroughly.
math educator from Wetmore. We had
Two
two Sabetha, so I guess we didn't have input from the Axtell math education, but
She's been at all of our meetings.
Okay.
They've been at our meetings. They've looked at the books. They've had them. I've passed them around the
and
buildings.
so they've overwhelming, this wasn't a closed call for them. This was what they,
And I've had it in my board reports that we were having meetings. I guess I feel like, I don't know,
what else? I
Did
don't
we
know
get a
what else to
second
do.
for the motion?
We need a second, yes.
I'll second the motion.
The motion was support to approve the McGraw-Hill Reveal Math Resource for grades 6 through Algebra 2. Any additional questions or comments? Those in favor raise a hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-1. Item 11 is an executive session for discussion of personnel matters.
Do you want one session for how long?
I would say, 20 minutes and start with Jason Tynan joining us.
And so I'll make a motion that we go into executive session for the purpose of discussing non-elected personnel matters under COMA, which is an allowed category for 20 minutes with Mr. Evans and other staff as needed for different points of discussion. If it's 7:24 now, 20 minutes, that puts us at 7:44. Returning.
Second.
Motion with support to enter executive session for discussion of personnel matters. Mr. Evans and then other staff as needed, and we'll return to regular session at 7:44. Those in favor raise a hand. Those same sign, motion passes 7-0.
I didn't plan on asking any of the other administrators to join us. Do any of you have any plans for that? Okay. So they're welcome to leave you.
I just added that part in because it seemed like you had one,
Right.
not more than one.
So can we just stay in here then?
No, because the camera's on and the,
We'll record when we come back to the regular session.
I guess we're going
Okay, thank you.
Where are we going? Here?
it's right back
Yeah,
here.
we're going back here.
The store. You are perfectly positioned, Mr. Sailor.
My dad might call this area a woodshed.
When you leave, shut all the way.
Hang on, Ed.
Outside. Oh, there's Jim.
Give me a second. I better not forget those, we'll be in trouble.
You still have your diploma signed? More of us? You still have more?
Bye.
Everybody's gone. Everybody's split.
We have time left?
We're early.
5 minutes left.
I know.
I didn't think
I
I'd
didn't know.
Well, and that's just not acceptable.
Isn't particularly everybody else. So if I can, if that doesn't keep them too busy, I'm gonna give them a holiday.
Yeah, right.
Can we talk about graduations?
Sure.
So, is everybody trying to go to all of them on Saturday?
No.
Okay,
I've got, my kids are gonna be here.
okay, I just wondered, I know I'm going to high school, but I
Yeah,
just didn't know.
Leslie and I are handing out diplomas or
But I just-
something or other.
You have representation at all of them, right?
Ann's gonna be at Axtell,
Okay.
Kent's going to all of them, Ed's going to all of them,
Okay.
okay?
I got
Can we
kids.
dress down?
The girls are gonna be here from Aberdeen.
Oh, well, that's good. Gotta be there for that.
And,
To see
and
her.
so Leslie is going to SHS,
Hopefully,
Kathy's going to SHS.
we'll have.
Yeah, I mean, SHS, if you got two, you don't need 3 or 4 board members up there on the stage.
Yeah.
Did you
No,
confirm
I
that
don't
you
mean
have
that.
enough
I
for your
just mean
June
going.
2nd meeting?
Just to be,
But I mean,
Nice.
like at the
I
other
did
two,
not.
usually we're
We
set.
need
That's
to-
probably a good idea.
I gotta get a heads up on that. I
Because
gotta
you're not
change that.
available, Ann, is that right?
I mean, I can change that
June
appointment, but it will,
2nd.
take me a
Who's
while.
available for that meeting, June 2nd? Is everybody available? Okay.
I don't know,
I'll,
my kids
I'll be
should
coming
be.
in from the Grand Canyon with, blazing trails, but
Okay, so we
I'll
would,
be here.
what time
we
is
would
it?
possibly have
Graduation?
5 even without
You get
Jim, so
11.
if Jim's able to come,
And then
that'd be
Wetmore
six.
does theirs at like 2?
June 2nd.
I should
But it's
be.
1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Ed,
Right, because you're looking for a quorum.
Ed, what time is
Yeah.
graduation in Wetmore?
I mean, it's
2
just
o'clock.
work. I mean, nobody's gonna steal my work at home.
7.
I'll still be there when I get there.
So
got lights on the truck?
the 13th, is that just the building
Second, yeah.
committee that's touring?
Yes, it's just the facility committee. If they want to come, they don't have to, but they're sure.
I won't be there.
But if we have more than 3, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
So if somebody else
Somebody will
wants
be
to go,
sent home.
yeah.
I don't think I can be there.
That's when the CMARs come into each
Mhm.
building. I would like to be there for Axtell. If that-
No, that's.
Okay,
as long
because
as-
Leslie said she's
I
not
don't
able to be
think I
there,
can
so,
make it.
yeah, that'd be fine then.
But,
What time? We're starting at 7?
7:30
Uh,
at Wetmore.
I don't.
Let's start at 7. Let's get it done.
Some of those people
I'm up
driving,
anyway.
driving 2 hours, I think that's probably why. It's Leslie and Jim now, that's one comment the architects mentioned, though, they said, in one respect, yeah, you get, it's kind of a touchy-feely thing, I'll describe it. But the other part of it was, you won't learn any secrets from those people because
Oh, no.
all 3 representatives from those companies are there, and they don't want to tell their competitors what's,
I
you know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Now we're on. Okay.
So,
Oh, we are.
On YouTube, the meeting is still going.
so anyway, I'm just saying they just mentioned that, yeah, you can get some perspective, but, the real work is after that, when they see what things we love to see done and go to work. And boy, they don't have much time to put that puppy together, but,
So this Thursday starts at 7:30.
I believe 7:30, isn't it?
Yes,
At Wetmore.
that way. And then we're gonna just move to Sabetha, then to Axtell.
Lorraine, you could call them.
I will. I teach an exercise class on Thursday nights. You're not gonna get up there before 7, right?
I mean, it'll be in there, I mean,
Just something-
Are we there yet, Deb?
In the evening.
Make a
Get a
motion,
motion to go to regular
This
session.
is all.
make a motion to return to regular
7
session.
in the morning.
Yeah, this is in the morning, Ann.
Got a motion with support to return to regular session. Those in favor, raise a hand. Pose same sign. Motion passes 7-0. We're in regular session.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion with support to adjourn. Those in favor, raise a hand. Pose same sign. Motion passes 7-0. We're adjourned. Thank
You
you.
want to be there, Ann.
Thank you all.
I thought, who's gonna be up here from Ottawa at 7 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. That's even better than I can teach my class.
Question for you.
Hey, Kathy, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
About graduation.
Some sort of, I've got lots of summer dresses that are just short sleeve, bright colors.
You're gonna wear a dress?
Yeah.
And maybe Brianna.
'Cause the pants that I have, I don't like the way they fit, so a dress hides a lot of sins.
Yeah.
In the class.
I think that's the opposite. But anyway, we got an email from him today and I didn't know if
Anybody wants to build
about time. So.
We have,
I mean,
this is a
That's not a-